mentioned, my name is Melissa Lonnie, and my partner in crime is Heather Bywaters, and we're both public health nurses from the Middlesex London Health Unit. And some of our work is focused on infant and early childhood mental health and supporting young children, parents, caregivers, and families. And we are thrilled to be here today to discuss supporting social emotional well-being in the early years. Thank you for attending, and we welcome your questions, comments, and experiences. And oops, sorry guys, I got to advance the slide here as well. And today we hope to cover the information related to what does mental health and social emotional well-being mean or look like for young children, what can parents and caregivers do to promote the social emotional well-being of young children, and where to go for help as well. If you have any questions or comments about something in this presentation, please make note of it and we can discuss it at the end of the presentation. Okay, so when you think about mental health, what does that look like? Do you see someone who appears happy and content, a person who is enjoying life, a person who can handle stressful situations and bounce back? Or maybe you see a person with lots of family and friends around them to support them. The World Health Organization defines mental health as a state of mental well being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well and work well, and contribute to their community. But what does all of this mean when we think about babies and young children? What stresses do they have? What abilities are they growing? How are they learning about the world? And how will this eventually help them to learn and work well, especially with others as they grow? For young children, social and emotional well being or mental health does not mean the same thing as it does for adults. Most of the time, we are not looking for a diagnosis or mental illness, like, say, for instance, schizophrenia. What we are looking at is the focus on healthy relationships and secure attachment. Okay, so you have to bear with me here for a moment. Let's see if there we go. So, how a baby or young child demonstrates mental health depends on the age and developmental stage of the child. What do you see when you picture a happy baby, a sad baby, a frustrated baby? And how does this change when you picture a happy toddler or preschooler, or a child who is sad or frustrated? I'm guessing it looks very different depending on the age of the child you are thinking about, and it will continue to change as that child gets older. I know it would be inappropriate for me to throw myself on the floor and scream and cry when I'm frustrated, but there are times when I wish I could. As adults, we've learned a lot to help us cope with and manage our emotions, and that is what the little people in our lives are working on. A child who is socially and emotionally healthy is working on, oh boy, there we go, establishing and maintaining close relationships. And this starts with the relationship that they have with parents and caregivers, and then progresses to friends. They're working on expressing and regulating their emotions. So, how our little people deal with stress and frustrations, how they express happiness and sadness, and how they approach new environments and new learning opportunities. Are they excited about new things, tentative, or is change difficult for them? All of this work that children are doing happens in the context of the relationships they have with the important people around them, their parents, caregivers, grandparents, other family members, and teachers. These relationships are the foundation from which they grow to accomplish those tasks. There we go. Okay, so the research has shown that the most important factor in a young child's mental wellness is having a caring, kind parent or caregiver who is dependable and responds to their needs. And this can be extended to anyone who cares for a child, and ideally is more than one person in the child's life. Dr. Jean Clinton says that every child needs someone who lights up when they come into a room, someone who delights in that child so that they know that they are appreciated and are a source of happiness for the adults around them. It's connecting with the child so that they know that they are important and valued for who they are, not just when they are quote unquote being good. Sorry. There we go. When children are born, their little brains have so much potential and are busy making connections and shaping the architecture of their brain through their interactions with everyone and everything around them. Experts in the emotional and social development of children agree that the first 3 years of life, a child's life, are important in creating a strong foundation that can help them as they grow. A positive attachment or connection with a responsive caregiver, relationships that provide positive experiences, relationships where the caregiver's response is based on the child's developmental needs or their age and stage, and consistent and appropriate developmental support. All of this leads to secure attachment. And if we think about the building of a brain, like the building of a house, the relationship between children and their adults, that secure attachment is the foundation of their present and future mental well being, and so much more. Young children experience their world as an environment of relationship, and these relationships affect virtually all aspects of their development. Their intellectual development, how they learn, think, process information to make sense of their world, their social development, or how they relate to others, their emotional development, how they understand who they are, what they are feeling, and how to express and manage their emotions, their physical development, how they grow and learn new skills, their behavioral development, how they act, react, and function in the world, their moral development, how they understand right and wrong in their world, and the values of those around them. There is evidence to say that children who experience secure attachment in the early years are more likely to experience success in school and in employment later in life. They're less likely to experience chronic health problems. Less unwanted pregnancy is experienced, less problems with the justice system, and have better relationships with others in their lives. We are teaching children through relationship and connection how to be in the world around them. Additionally, experts say that the quality and stability of a child's human relationships in the early years impact self confidence, sound mental health, motivation to learn, achievement in school and later life, ability to control aggressive impulses, the ability to solve conflicts in nonviolent ways, knowing the difference between right and wrong, the capacity to develop and sustain casual friendships and intimate relationships, and even to be a successful parent. The foundation of relationship and connection is there for the whole of a child's life. These relationships really do affect brain development and brain wiring. Early, healthy, secure relationships are like preventative medicine. They are a key ingredient so that a person can be the best they can be throughout their lifespan and are more likely to have optimal development. Also, these early healthy relationships can buffer or lessen the impact of any stressors or trauma that life tends to throw at us. Okay, so here is a video that illustrates why relationship is so important. Although in this TED Talk the youngest child is an infant and the older child is 7, these same principles apply well into the young adult years and beyond.
What if I was to tell you that a game of peekaboo could change the world? Sounds impossible, right? Well, I'm here today to prove it's not. Hi, I'm Molly, and I'm 7, and this is my little friend Ari. Say hi, Ari. Hi. Oh, and this is my neighbour, Amajot. He has to take Ari away now to get ready for our experiment. But don't worry, they'll be back. My talk today is about some powerful things you grown-ups can do that shape us as children and the adults we become. How do I know? Because my parents and people around me did them, early and often. I know not all kids are as lucky. Some of my friends, some kids at my school, and many around the world. And I would really like to help change that. Thanks to scientists, we now know just how important the first 5 years are for our health and development, especially our brains. Ari started learning long before he was even born, from inside his mummy's tummy. When Ari was born, he was tiny, and he cried all the time. He was always hungry, and he pooped a lot. Now, he laughs and giggles and makes funny noises. But those are just the changes we hear and see. There's way more going on inside. So, let's talk more about our brains. The blue bag is the rough size and weight of a healthy baby's brain at birth. The red one is a baby's brain after the first year. It almost doubles in volume. And by my age, it's almost 90% the volume of an adult brain. Our brains develop faster in our early years than at any other time in our lives. It can create up to 1 million neural connections every second. But we need your help. Our healthy development depends on these top 5 things. 1, connecting. 2, talking. 3, playing. 4, a healthy home. 5, community. All of this helps our brains and us reach our full potential. So what's something you can do that can really make a difference? Scientists call it serve and return. That's just a grown-up way of saying connect, talk, and play with us. And here's the really big news. Amajot, Ari, you ready?
Ready?
Copycat games build imagination and empathy.
And
Naming games build vocabulary and attention.
is it Daddy? Ari, Daddy, Ari.
And games like Peekaboo, yep, Peekaboo, actually build memory and trust. Each time you talk to us, play with us, make us laugh, it not only builds and strengthens our relationships and mental health, it actually teaches us some of the most important life skills. From making friends, to taking a test, to getting a job, to one day maybe even starting a family of our own. Interactions early and often matter. Take it from me, the 7-year-old up here, talking about brain science. Okay, now, let's see what happens when the connection is taken away. So now he's trying to get his dad's attention again. He's reaching out like, that was fun, why have you stopped? I know it's important for adults to use their devices sometimes, but kids are hardwired to seek out meaningful connections. Not receiving them causes confusion and stress. Okay, Amajot, please re-engage.
Sorry. Okay.
Now, what if a whole childhood was like that last 30 seconds? How hard it would be for a child to feel calm, to feel safe, to learn to trust anyone, and the lifelong impact that would have. That makes me feel sad. Ari only reacted the way he did and recovered so quickly because the connection between him and his dad is usually so strong. The positive relationships with the grown-ups in our lives gives kids the confidence we need to try new things, to explore, and be a kid. So please try and remember, the most special period for our development is the first 5 years. starting from inside Mummy's tummy. What's something really impactful you can do? Serve and return. And when? Early and often. Please give it up for Amachot and Ari. Every moment together is an opportunity to connect, talk, and play. Imagine the difference we could make if everyone everywhere did this. To us, to children, it's so much more than just a game. It's our future. Thank you. See? Peekaboo really can change the world.
Okay, thank you for your patience. So I'm Heather, and I'm just going to continue on where Melissa left off. And I hope you really enjoyed that video, and I hope you go back to it and review it again. It's very powerful, and each time we view it, we see and learn new things. So thank you. So what can parents and caregivers do to promote social emotional well-being in young children? Well, we do know there's no such thing as perfect parenting. And all of us at different times can look at how we're caring for our children and see things that we like about what we're doing, and then see things that we'd like to change or do differently in the future. No one can be completely engaged and on as a parent all of the time. So striving to be the best parent or caregiver you can be is good enough. This doesn't mean reading all the books, the articles, the blogs that are out there about parenting, although some of them you might find quite useful. And there is some good information out there and some good tips. But the huge amount of information out there can be overwhelming. And remember that the children in your life, they haven't read the books or the blogs, and they never will. So the most important thing to remember is connecting with your child. They are always looking for connection with you, no matter how old they are. So we're going to not stress about being the perfect parent, but we need to remember that there's always a chance to make changes in our parenting. As we learn and experience more in life, we discover new approaches that we didn't know about before. I've heard the phrase, when we know better, we do better. But I prefer when we know differently, we do differently. So we can do the best we can with what we know at the time. So what can parents and caregivers do to promote social emotional well-being in young children? Be with and spend time with your child is the key. So being with just means engaging with them and interacting with them to continue to build that strong foundation that Melissa was talking about of connection and relationship. And it doesn't have to be 100% of the time. Our lives are extremely busy and we all have many demands on us. And growing up is hard work for little ones, and they have so much to learn, and they can learn it from many different people as well. So being with and spending time with children allows us to teach and support them as they learn important life skills like waiting, sharing, and taking turns. It allows us to help them navigate their way through challenges without removing all of the stressors. Oops, sorry. We don't want to remove all the stressors and all the challenges they meet in life. We want to equip them to cope in the future. And we call this building resiliency in your child. So there's a link that we've added here that you can view later that was developed by an organization called Circle of Security. And they do a wonderful job of explaining what it means when we say be with. So Molly Wright in the TED Talk video talked about serve and return. And serve and return can look like many, many different things, as long as there's that back and forth, talking, playing, and seeking to connect, like she said. The character of serve and return changes as your child ages. And it's just as important for you to return the serve as it is to serve. And I know that can be really hard for adults. We want to initiate so much with our children, but our children need to get used to initiating as well. So responding to that, to their initiation or their serve, is really important. If a young baby, like little baby Ari, makes noise or changes their facial expressions or body language, they're really trying to serve and communicate or seek connection. Having strong connections early makes more challenging communication easier in the future. So I'm thinking in the teenage years. You can't all of a sudden ignore the early years and expect to connect with your teen during that time. You have to build that foundation of communication and attachment little by little, and that'll make the teen years a little bit easier. So devices. I know Molly referred to devices in the video, and it's a bit of a bugaboo for me. I know that some people are really concerned about children using electronic devices because of the radiation they can emit. But more concerning to me and to those of us who are working in the early years is that when you're interacting or when you're using a device, it is taking the place of some kind of meaningful connection that could have been happening between a caregiver and their child. And it doesn't matter whether the child or the adult is using the device. Now, there is a bit of an exception to that, and we learned that in the pandemic. We learned that we could use FaceTime to interact with people who weren't physically with us, and that's fine. Or as children get older, research shows that they can also benefit from working with an adult or working from a fellow student on a project using a device. But in both those instances, there's still some kind of connection. Other things that you can do, I just want to reassure you, and I can't emphasize enough, that you are the expert when it comes to your own child. You have learned to read their cues and can therefore respond to them in ways that are meaningful to them. Children often wear their emotions on their sleeves, and many parents and caregivers can look at their child's body language and tell when they're excited, happy, or sad. Responding to a child shows them that you value them, that you care about them, and that you're there for them, which helps builds that trust we were talking about before. So because you're the expert, you can also support your child when they're interacting with new people or others who don't quite get them or understand them. It's like being an interpreter or being a voice for your child in a potentially stressful situation. It builds their confidence in you and assures them that you always have their back, which is really important. It's also important to be as consistent as much as possible. It lets your child know what to expect from you and your relationship and allows a bit of predictability so that during the hard moments, they can trust that you still care about them and are there for them. Again, I need to emphasize that life happens, and sometimes we can't be as consistent and as responsive as we would like to be. Try to be realistic, be kind to yourself. Consistency does not mean perfection. And finally, stay curious. When you stay curious, you tend to ask more questions and make less assumptions about your child. It's easier to stay engaged when we are curious. Lots of serve and return interactions come out of staying curious. So we're wondering about the why, how, what of their actions and delighting in what we can discover. Through all of this, all these interactions, you're strengthening that foundation of secure attachment and building your relationship with your child, which will pay huge dividends as they grow and develop. I just wanted to say a little bit more about serve and return because we've been talking a lot about that. And we've included a link to a video that you'll be able to access. So you in the future, you'll be able to access this video to revisit it if you wish, as well as a copy of the PowerPoint. So you'll be able to click on all these links and watch some videos that we just don't have time to show you today, but that are still important. So this particular video was produced by the Harvard Center on the Developing Child. And in this video, they flesh out the 5 steps of serve and return. And according to that particular video, these are the steps. The first one is notice the serve and share the child's focus of attention. In order to do that, you have to be paying attention in the beginning. So that's a good signal to put your devices away. And when a child serves to you, it's important that someone reacts and responds whenever possible. And Molly, in the TED Talk video that we saw, she gave a very good graphic example of what happens to a child when they aren't responded to. They panic, and it causes them lots of extra stress. That's also, in my experience, and I'm sure your experience too, when we don't respond, that's when you get the mommy, 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 daddy, 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 poke, 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 grab your legs, and the meltdown happens. Because you're not responding and children haven't developed a lot of patience to wait. So even if in the moment you're busy and you can't address their specific need at the time, even signaling to them a simple glance or a thumbs up or a mommy's talking to Miss Smith right now and I'll listen to what you have to say in a minute. All of that goes a long way in reassuring your child that they have been heard and seen, which is so important to us as human beings. But at the same time, it's helping them deal with that stress and the social skill of waiting or delayed gratification. Please note that this does not mean that you have to drop everything instantly to meet their every need immediately. But it does mean trying to respond in a kind, respectful way that does acknowledge their developmental stage and the current situation that they're in. So the second point is return the serve by supporting and encouraging. And this often requires some kind of verbal support and sometimes physical support. So you actually have to get up and go and see what they want to share with you, what they're serving to you. Number 3, give it a name. It's really important to encourage our children to learn new vocabulary. And this is a point of early literacy and communication skills. And it's really important that they learn early that things have names and that they learn how to describe what they're seeing. Number 4, this is probably one of the most difficult ones, is take turns and wait. Keep the interaction going back and forth. We need to give them time to respond. We don't have to fill in all the gaps while they're processing information. So I guess I'm saying try not to be too quick to jump in and fix something. It's a very fine balance between supporting your child's independence and resilience building and avoiding overwhelming frustration. So many situations that young children find themselves in, it's all new to them. So it would be normal that they would take time to respond to your serve or take time to develop in a situation. And they may not have the same answer that you have, and that's okay. We need to allow them that freedom and creativity. And lastly, practice endings and beginnings. Young children have so little control over their lives, and practicing endings and beginnings is a great opportunity to allow them to make some limited choices. So go ahead and let your child decide what they'd like to play with. Give them limited choices to avoid total chaos, but also let them choose when they are done with one activity or toy and want to move on with the next. You can still teach them to help with clearing up. It's not a free-for-all, but it's really important that they have some freedom to make decisions about what they're going to do and when it's a play situation. So an example of serve and return in action would be, say you take your child to the park and they come back to you with an acorn. So that's the first serve. Your child asks you, "What is it?" and you say something like, oh, you found an acorn from an oak tree. So you've returned their serve and you've built upon the knowledge that they first had. And you might say, should we look and see if we can find more, or we can find the tree that they came from? So you go with them to find the oak tree, and your child points out that, yeah, there's other acorns on the tree and on the ground. And then you might tell them that, yeah, I see those. And did you know that squirrels like to bury acorns for food in the winter? So again, you've responded to them again, and you've built on the prior knowledge that they have. And you can keep it going, making serves and returns and responses and offering new information. And it's an amazing back and forth as you stay curious and think about what might appeal to your particular child based on their age and stage and what you know of them. So a toddler might be more interested in feeling the acorn, and you can discuss that. Or a 3 or 4-year-old might just want to explore more about the trees and the leaves and have lots and lots of questions because they are the masters of staying curious. So there are a number of things that can get in the way with connecting with your child. Life is busy. There's a lot of competing interests that demand our time and attention. Some other things that can interfere with connecting with our children is assigning meaning or motives to their behavior, particularly when we assume that they are misbehaving, and they may not be. They may just be trying to tell you something. So Dr. Stuart Shanker is an expert in self-regulation, and he's a professor at York University in philosophy and psychology. And he encourages us to see all behavior as communication, which I think is really interesting. And he talks about the difference between misbehavior versus stress behavior. And usually what we label as misbehavior is more often a stress behavior. So being curious and asking yourself what your child may be wanting to communicate helps you get into their shoes and furthers your connection with them. It's not always obvious what they're trying to communicate, and it can change as your child grows and changes in different situations. It's part of learning to be a parent, reading your child's cues, whether it's a crying baby, words as an elementary school child, or the nonverbal body language of a teenager. Stuart Shanker also encourages parents and caregivers to ask yourself, what just happened, instead of asking the child, why did you do that? We need to put things in context. He also says, see a child differently, see a different child. So when you ask questions instead of making assumptions, it totally changes your perspective. And a further question to ask is, why this behavior and why now? So what has happened to cause this specific behavior at this point in time? Staying curious as a parent, particularly in these situations, is very helpful. And it may also help to remember that when anyone is upset, we call it flipping their lid, and their thinking brain is something they can no longer access. It's their emotional brain that's taken over. And this applies to adults too. So realize that at the time when you and your child are upset, that's not the time to have a long, in-depth conversation about what's going on, because neither of you has your thinking brain online. You may just need to step in, have a cuddle if they want to, or just be with, stay close until everybody calms down. You reestablish your connection, and then you can have your conversation. So another way of describing this is for the calm person, if there is a calm person in that situation, is to lend your calm to the child, lend them your calm. Or you may have also heard terms such as co-regulate. You want to do this before addressing their concern, especially with young children, because you're just wasting your time if they aren't calm while you're talking with them. And self-regulation is about understanding. It's not about monitoring and managing somebody's behavior. It's about allowing the child to experience them, think about them, and make decisions about future behavior. Temperament can be another factor for getting in the way of communication with children and secure attachment. All children are different, all people are different, our genes are different, and how our past experiences have impacted our genes are different. And it's all resulted in different brain wiring. And you may have a child that's a little more difficult for you to connect with for whatever reason, and that's normal and very common. So it may take more effort for certain children for you to understand their behavior, especially stress behavior, and also to learn what their cues mean, even from an infant. So what can help is that if you try to engage with your child from a strength-based approach. For example, a child that's is exhibiting strong personality, or you're interpreting it as strong personality, you may focus on the fact that they may have the drive and the fortitude to be in a position of authority someday, and they're just showing their colors very early. Again, see a child differently, see a different child. Um, when you have a child whose temperament is less well matched with yours, it's really important to ensure that there are others in their life that can also connect with them and be securely attached to them. Either another parent, a caregiver, a grandparent, a friend, for the benefit of both you and the child. There's no limit to the number of secure attachments a child can have. Lastly, sometimes how we were parented can interfere how we parent and provide care. So when we reflect back on our childhoods, we can all identify positive and negative experiences and situations that were contributed to by our parents and caregivers. Sometimes our child's behavior may trigger a response in us that sounds like how our parent talked to us in our childhood, and we swore we would never do that to our children. So it's important that we explore our feelings about our child's behavior and our responses and where that might be coming from, and it can help us work our way to how best to support our child and deal with our own feelings. And again, this can help build the attachment relationship. So I've included on this slide a link to another video of Circle of Security, and this part is called Shark Music. It starts partway through. It's the second half of the previous link, and the shark music is the music that you hear when your parent's voice comes back to you when you're talking to your child. So it's very interesting, and I encourage you to look at that at a later time. So as parents and caregivers, it's normal to worry about how you're doing in your role. I don't think there's a parent anywhere who hasn't wished they'd done something different at one time or the other. Parenting is not an all or nothing activity. And at some points in our lives, things are easier and other times more challenging for a variety of different reasons. Science does not say do not let anything bad happen to your child. That's totally unrealistic. What the science does say is that parents and caregivers can provide a buffer or a safe place to help your child get through the tough stuff by being with them, guiding them, supporting them, whether that's waiting for their turn with a toy, learning to put on their own coat, or helping them cope with big emotions when they have to stop playing at the end of the day. And it's never too late to make changes in your relationship with your child. But just remember that trying something new will take time for you and your child to adapt. Do-overs are possible. Science has shown that the brain is much more plastic or flexible than we first realized. Positive experiences can change and rewire the brain long beyond the early years as well, which I find very encouraging. So just a word about self-care. Self-care is anything you do to take care of yourself so you can stay physically, mentally, and emotionally well. And it looks very different for all of us. And it's really important that we take care of ourselves so we can continue to take care of the younger people in our lives. For some people, self-care can mean taking a walk, listening to music, reading a book, or taking a bath. For others, it can mean meeting to chat with a friend, working out at the gym. It's whatever you can do that helps you feel recharged. And taking care of your own needs isn't selfish. It definitely helps you to cope with the many demands on you as a caregiver. In addition to taking care of yourself, adults need to know what calm feels like in order to help children achieve calmness. So it can be important that parents and caregivers practice strategies that often help us to feel calm. The strategies listed on the slide, such as breathing and relaxation, distraction, and positive self-talk, are often cited examples that people find helpful for feeling calm. Role modeling and teaching children in our lives these important strategies can benefit them throughout their lives. There are also many different examples of tools and videos and activities across the internet that you could look at. I've just posted one here at the bottom of the slide called Just Breathe, and I like it very much because it involves children and adults talking about how breathing exercises help them to stay calm. You could also look on the websites of CBC Kids, TVO Kids, YouTube, Sesame Street. There's a number of different videos you can access that'll take you through some breathing and calming exercises. So some tips to remember. Relationship always comes first. Dr. Clinton, who's a Canadian child psychologist that we all love to hear talk, she likes to say connection before direction or correction. By focusing on the relationship and by connecting with your child first, it allows them to be in a space where they're more likely to listen to you and engage in problem solving with you. There may be times where you will need to correct a child as the first step, like when there's a safety concern to deal with. But when you have a strong foundation of connection that's been built over time, it can make the corrections and the redirections easier for a child to handle and cope with. We also want to encourage fostering a sense of working together and patience in your home. If you model this for your children, they're more likely to follow your lead with you, siblings, peers, and other people. Also, we encourage you to be a thermostat, not a thermometer, so you can help your child regulate their emotions. So a thermostat, as you know, regulates the temperature. So either hot or cold, you set it where you want it to be. Thermometers reflect the temperature. So you want to help your child learn to regulate their emotions, not add fuel to their fire. You can help them best by being patient and by role modeling calming strategies for them. So when two people in a relationship are both upset and stressed, nobody can think straight. So part of the strategy is to calm down together, try some of these activities, and move forward to a resolution. That's why it's so important for the parent or the caregiver to be able to take that first step wherever possible. So again, there is no such thing as a perfect parent. Aim for good enough parenting. Strive for consistency, but be patient with yourself. We're all human. So you may have some concerns about your child's social and emotional well-being. You may have had them before you arrived here, or we may have brought some things to mind. So I'll just quickly go through this slide that you will be able to access all these resources later. So we always encourage the first person you should talk to if you have concerns is your healthcare provider. Hopefully they know your family well and will be able to connect you with further resources. If you don't have one, we now have the website called Health 811, or you can just dial 811. This will get you to an application where you can ask for a healthcare provider for your family. This new Health 811 is a combination of finding a healthcare provider and Telehealth Ontario, where you can ask questions. So it's all merged together now. I also encourage you, if your child's in school, to talk to your child's teacher. If they're in childcare, their ECE or another educator, they've got other resources through a group called All Kids Belong that's part of Marymount, and they'll be able to get some extra resources for you. I'll point out Vanier Children's Services for you. They've got a crisis line as well, and they offer a variety of services related to mental health for children, one-on-one, in groups, short-term, long-term, happening at your home, happening at the school, happening at Vanier offices. So they're accessible 24 hours a day. We also have Marymount Family Support and Crisis Center in London, and they provide respite care as well as parenting classes for parents and classes for children to learn skills as well. The Finding Support link is actually compiled by the Family Wellbeing Workshops series. So there's lots of good resources there. And then familyinfo.ca has crisis services at that link as well. You can also call the health unit to talk to a public health nurse at our main number, Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30, and we're pretty good at assessing out services and supports for you as well. You may be wondering if there's something you can use to check on your child's social emotional development on your own. There are limited resources in that area, but here's a few. So there's this early years check-in by Health HQ, and it asks you to rate your concerns about your child, but it focuses on 18 months to 6 years. So it doesn't start as early as we would like it to be starting. There's also a visit planner. So when you are going to see your doctor, particularly with the 18-month well baby visit, with the enhanced developmental assessment, you can go through it and use it to help plan your visit and make sure you capture all the points you want to talk to your doctor about. The Look-See checklist is a really family-friendly checklist that you can use to assess your child's development and social emotional concerns. Your healthcare provider will also be familiar with it. There are going to be some changes in Ontario starting September 1st with this tool, so stay tuned. But if you run up against some roadblocks or barriers, just call us at the health unit and we can get the checklist to you. And also remember that healthcare providers also have a number of tools that they use on their own or can use in conjunction with you. So if you have questions about social emotional development, just approach some of the professionals that you have in your life and they'll be able to review some tools with you. This is a slide that if you need some activities to build on your foundation of secure attachment, there's lots of activities listed at all these slides, at all these links here. So familyinfo.ca tells you where all the play groups happening at family centers and early on centers are happening. Active for Life gives you physically active activities to do with your child. The Look-See checklist also has suggestions for activities. Don't forget your public library. And then there's also play and learn activities, and you can receive emails to your inbox as well. Just some websites here for you to take a look at in terms of mental health or social emotional well-being. School Mental Health Ontario has a Parents and Caregivers tab. The Thames Valley District School Board has wonderful information, as does the Catholic Board. And you can click on these links and get to many different resources. And then we have TVCC, formerly Thames Valley Children's Center, and they now have a smart hub where you can access supports and they'll guide you through the application process if you think you need help with your child. Okay, in closing, we'd like to show you this brief video that really sums up and reinforces the importance and power of relationships in the lives of our children.
When a child is born, we do everything we can to protect them, nurture them, love them. A child's heart and mind are fragile. As they grow, we want to teach them everything we know. We send them to school to fill their minds with wonderful knowledge, to give them the tools they need for life. At school, they get a taste of what things are like in the world outside. There is friendship, romance, disappointment, embarrassment, discrimination, and bullying. But are the tools we give them enough to prepare them for this world? We have an enormous responsibility and an amazing opportunity. If we truly want to prepare them for the world outside, we must also educate the heart. Because to navigate the world outside with compassion, acceptance, and tolerance, we need to teach them compassion, acceptance, and tolerance. This can begin in our schools, and it can start today. It can happen at hockey practice, dance class, at day camps, and music lessons. And it's already happening around the world with astonishing results. If we want our children to grow into socially and emotionally capable young people, we must ask for a balanced education that puts importance on educating both the mind and the heart.
While we give people a few moments to do that, I just have to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I know Tiffany does the formal thank yous later, but just that wealth of knowledge. And I'm sure that you saw Tiffany and I nodding along quite a bit. And it's always so validating and I don't know, uplifting and hopeful when we hear similar messaging to what we as a portfolio in the Safe Schools and Wellbeing team and all of this work that we're trying to do. I don't know if you can see in the background of Tiffany's display behind her. She's got like a little triangle. And for us, that really roots, it's all in relationships, right? We talk about relationships, we talk about connection and just the power of those before we get to any learning and being able to regulate things like that. So thank you both for all the efforts you put into this. Just
Absolutely. I would completely second that, Melissa and Heather. I think I love every little drip of what you just had to say. Like really this beautiful foundation, but we don't stop doing those things after our children reach a certain age. We just continue and we change and grow alongside our children. So, things you mentioned like Dr. Jean Clinton. What a beautiful resource, an incredible speaker, talking about love growing brains. Just absolutely amazing information. Caitlin and I were quipping the other day about the term tantrum and how it's so interesting that sometimes we use the word tantrum to be a little bit dismissive about our littlest kiddos emotional intensity and if we can appreciate that they experience this intensity and this is really the earliest time that they experience it and can communicate with it, it tells us that our reactions should not be to ignore it. Our reactions should be to lean in fact, and be able to combine with them to co-regulate and calm as much as we can, to know our limits, to have compassion for ourselves, and to realize you probably shouldn't waste the effort to try and reason when someone's experiencing that level of emotional intensity. Just be with them. So, how beautifully you presented the information. We're just so very grateful for your willingness to join our audience today, and also to eventually we will kind of edit and upload a recording of this presentation. But in the interim, have you share your slides with us so that we can put them up on our website because you provided so many amazing clickable links there. And so we'd like to be able to provide that to people after the presentation so that they can follow along some of the things that you've recommended. I don't see any additional
No.
audience questions or coming
Great.
through. Yeah. So again, we just want to thank you so much for your time, energy, and effort toward collaborating with us. We appreciate it. We know the amount of effort that it takes. I see a little heart emoji fly up, so I love that audience members know these reactions and can do this for you to show the love to you the same way that Caitlin and I have appreciated your willingness to be with us today. So this final slide is just to say both a thank you to you as presenters, but also to our audience for joining us today. And these are also additional contact information for both Caitlin and myself. On this slide is actually clickable. So if you hover over it, then anyone can click it and it will take you to these links in a different window in your browser if you're using a laptop or I think a tablet device. So again, should anyone in the audience have any further questions or require more information about this project overall, where we come to our community and bring subject matter and topics that we've heard are of interest, please feel free to connect with us, send us messages. The last thing that we'd ask of our audience as we conclude today is we'd really appreciate a few moments of your time to complete a feedback survey about today's session. This really helps us better serve our community as we move forward and understand what you're interested in and your experience of the webinar. And lastly, again, we just want to highlight our website where you can find information information about past and future workshops. We have a number of recordings uploaded now for you to review anytime you like. And there's also a suggestion box for any future topics you'd be interested in, or even community partners that you might suggest we engage with on topics. At the top of that same website, you'll also find the link to sign up for our mailing list, which will keep you up to date on all of our upcoming offerings, not only from our series, so when we host, but also any of our community partners who share information with us. So we encourage you to do that. And finally, we wish everyone well on your daily journey, and we hope that you join us again for future workshops. Thank you so much. Take care and have a wonderful day.